TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Who's going to take the rap, bro, for us being late? You or me? Who's going to take it?
Look, I might as well take it. I for some reason I always take the blame for everything else, Andrew. I'll take it.
All right.
I'll take the blame.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Look, hey, I got some pretty broad shoulders. I'll take a bit. I'll carry a little bit of weight. It's all me.
Oh, fantastic. Good to see you, bro. Thanks for jumping on. I know it's been a busy week for you. And as ever, coming on, and I look forward to hanging out with you for a little bit, talking about, you know, some Les Paul masters from the past. In particular, you know, we've singled out 3 for the conversation because we could have spoken about all of them and we'll be here until next week, bro. So we've got to have a starting point and an end point, bro.
100%, Andrew. There's no point sort of talking Les Paul players and try and cover every single one of them, Andrew, because we'll be here for the rest of the year just talking. We won't get any sleep. Well, mate, think of the weight we'd lose because we wouldn't be able to eat, drink, nothing. We'd be here talking forever.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. Just a bit of news for folks. See, just underneath Brad, you'll notice on the screen there, StreamYards have got a new feature or function where you're allowed your comments that normally traditionally be in the side panel are now on the screen. So 1 minute they're there, next minute they're gone, this minute they're there. So we're going to try that and see if that enhances the show, Brad.
I like it. I like having that little shadow of, you know, little comments popping up there, and I actually get to read the chat properly then too, which is great. So, you know what I mean? It's actually probably beneficial, more beneficial for me than everyone else.
Oh, that's right, bro. Good to see you, and I want to do a shout out at some stage, if I remember rightly. I'm going to put some people that are part of the International Rock and Roll Podcast Day that we've signed up to. I did a bit of a live stream a few days ago on the channel talking about that. Mainly it's just an opportunity, bro, for people to get together to push each other's podcasts, which is always good. That's what we're about, bro. So we've signed up to doing that. So we'll do that again on this show, if that's okay.
It's awesome, Andrew. And I did watch that show. That was great. Well done. No, it's good. It's always good to support other YouTube podcasts and everything that are, you know, we're at the end of the day, we're all doing it out of love. That's what we're here for, you know.
100%. Bro. Hey, I don't know about you, bro, but I'm getting this. I think we're gonna get gate crashed. Hold on, folks.
Uh-oh. Well done.
Good morning. Yes, thank you.
Welcome back, Simon. And Andrew, I'm a little bit worried that we're going to get in a lot of trouble with the Rock Professor now.
A lot of trouble.
That's the reason why we're late, folks. The Rock Professor, he's slept in. He's been off shift for about 5 weeks and he's slept in.
Apparently it's all crackling at my end.
Yeah, well, sounds perfectly fine at the moment, so let's not jinx it.
Well, yes.
Good to see the Rock Professor here. And we've got some good friends here in the chat too, Simon. Can you see the chat?
I can. Yeah.
You want to do
with the chat.
Do you want to do a shout out?
Yeah. So got Jonas. Good morning, Jonas. Ellen as well. Hi, Ellen. How you doing? Hope you're good. Arvin, of course. Arvin and I have been having very, very funny conversations about place names near me. I have a village near me called Nempnet Thrubwell. Arvin and I have been talking about Nempnet Thrubwell. She's been very nice. So talk about Monty Python things. Helene O'Hara, good morning, Helene. How are you? Hope you're good. John said, morning, John. All my thoughts. I'm crackling. I have crackling on the line. I don't know what that was. Carl Wilson.
That's Carl. That's our Carl.
Yes. Is it? Oh, right. With his secret name. Morning, Carl. I hope you're good, man. Going well. So, yeah. Morning to everyone. That's everyone, I think, who's made a comment. If you haven't made a comment, you want me to shout you out, so make a comment and I will. First, it's lovely to be back. I've where are we? It's 7 weeks.
Wow.
So 7 weeks. Yeah. I've only got. I've been out for 7 weeks. Got 5 to go before I can get rid of the collar of doom. It's holding my head on. It's the only thing holding my head on.
I actually thought it was a tracking device, Simon, that the police had put on you to make sure they know where you are.
It's more of a restraint than a tracking device. I just say, I have a friend of mine who I went to school with who I had this done on the Thursday. He had open heart surgery done on the Friday. So, split his ribcage. He's back driving. I've got another 5 weeks to wait. He's got a scar, 3 feet long kind of thing, But, I've got a twiddly little scar. Oh, no, you're not allowed in a car, sir, for several years.
Poor bugger.
Yes.
Get out, Simon. You're not long to go now. Not long.
I need a lot of sympathy. It's been. I tell you, you don't miss it till you miss it, do you? I mean, 7 weeks without being able to go out and drive and go and do something. That's quite hard work. I've had to get all my shopping delivered to my house and stuff.
Hey, enjoy it, Simon. Enjoy it while you can, because once you're back driving, you're going to be wishing that you never had to go out and do it all again.
Well, true, yes, possibly. And the other half my Caroline and my 2 daughters are in Austin, Texas right now. So it's only me and my youngest.
Yeah.
I'm at home. Yes.
It's good to have you back, Simon, on the show, and it's good to see you doing much better. And once that tracking device comes off, you'll be good to go.
Morning, Quentin. Hope you're good. Quentin's been having his own troubles as well. Hope he's all right. Hope you're all right, Quentin.
Yeah.
But now, what about getting to the hospital?
No, it's good to see you're back on deck, and at least for this show, it's a good one, Simon. To the Les Paul thing.
Wow,
I don't know if it's been pretty. We've been doing some pretty unplanned, unorganized shows. No rankings, no nothing. It's just been winging it. I think we've gotten pretty good at winging things, Andrew. What do you reckon? Like we have been doing a little bit of homework, but it's not quite the same as ranking the whole album, if you know what I mean.
No, it's not. And keeping the channel ticking along, which is always a good thing. And I've got to do a special shout out to you guys for doing that, and obviously everybody here that's joining us in the chat, because we've every week, every month goes by, we seem to be reaching milestones, Simon, on the channel, with subscribers and viewers and stuff like that. So, and comments. So, and we're just happy doing what we're doing. We're just having a conversation. In fact, guys, I unsubscribed from somebody and I'll tell you who the person is because we all know who the person is. But I'll tell you guys after. I won't talk about it live. But I unsubscribed from somebody who spent the last 2 hours, well, at least 2 hours, with their friends ditching Led Zeppelin because they were streaming the Led Zeppelin becoming Led Zeppelin documentary. So about half a dozen people just for 2 hours were just sitting there putting the boot into Led Zeppelin and Jimmy
Really?
Page, and I'm going,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm look, guys, I understand and defend the fact that music is personal. I understand that. I dig that. But I was just blown away by this person who I assumed would have been or understood clearly the legacy when you consider the music that this person plays and where it comes from in the first place.
Wow.
Well, we're looking forward to a bit of backstage drama.
Yeah, I've never understood. You know,
Easy target,
people,
isn't it? It's all easy targets.
I've never understood people dissing other bands for, you know, historically they've got nothing to prove. You know what I mean? They Led Zeppelin have got nothing to prove. What a couple of people sitting around dissing Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin are laughing their way all the way to the bank when, you know, this sort of stuff was happening in the 70s. They were getting bad press, bad publicity, and it just made them even more popular.
But,
Yeah, I
in
dig it.
some
I
ways,
dig it.
they're an easy target, aren't they? It's an easy target. It's, you know, what happened in 1969 is not what happens now, and you know, you can dress up all manner of stuff, and I think it's, you know, that I think for people like you and me that you know, the becoming Led Zeppelin is all about, you know, the background, that 60s background, their background as individual, like Jimmy Page's Uncle Joe's session musicians and all of that. Well, you know, it's very easy to shoot at them and go, oh, they stole riffs or they did this, you know, like all those blues guys never did anything of the sort. You know, it's you know, all those blues songs all have legacies in other blues songs and other bits and stuff. And it, you know, and I think that, you know, but it becomes, you know, 60 years on, whatever it is, it becomes easy targets, doesn't it? It becomes an easy target. It's a bit pointless myself, because as you say, their legacy is their legacy, and it's, you know, second to none, really. But
Disappointing.
Yeah, which it is, but you know, it's,
hey,
Oh,
it's gonna happen, guys. It's gonna happen. Let's be honest.
yeah, you know, but you know, we don't have to be involved in any of that sort of nonsense. I don't think we should either. You know, I absolutely
No.
don't think we should. Yeah, no, it's fine as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's all right. Won't affect them, will it?
Oh, well, it's gonna happen. Can't keep everyone happy, guys. Can't keep everyone happy.
All the time. No.
Hey,
no.
if Led Zeppelin can't do it, then how the hell are we meant to do it? Let's be honest.
That's true.
Yeah.
True enough. But anyway, it's not. I noticed that Becoming Led Zeppelin, I think it's going to be streamed on Netflix.
Is it?
Cool. I think so. Yeah. I think I read.
Oh, that'll be good. Because I was meaning to go and see it again at the cinemas. I was going to go watch it again, but I never got there.
Well, it's fine. It'll be on Netflix, and but while I've been sitting here, you know, recovering by thing, I watched the Bob Dylan movie with Timothy Chalamet, and I have like, do you know what? It was fine. I know a lot of the story. I've got biographies and all sorts of things, so you know, I understand what they did. But I have to say that the one thing that I thought they really missed it. They missed the trick. The real thing about it was that the Judas thing. You know, they transposed the Judas thing. You know, when he shouts out, somebody in the audience shouts out Judas, and clearly that's happened at the Manchester Free Trade Hall and not the Newport Close Festival. I understand why for dramatic reasons you'd move it. The issue I have is that in the Manchester Free Trade Hall one, he says into the microphone, "I don't believe you, you're a liar," and then he turns away and he says to the band, "Play fucking loud," right? And then in the film, he doesn't turn to the band and say, "Play fucking loud." He just says, "Play loud," and I think that lost all its drama is in one word, the F word, when that's the confrontation with the audience, and they didn't put it in, and I thought it fell really flat, and I was really annoyed by that. I knew I would.
Yeah.
Just,
I watched it. I mean, I just tried to watch it like as I do with.
Oh no, if you watch it as a thing, it's fine.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's like when I watched the Jim Morrison one, The Doors and stuff like that. I could tell a lot of it was embellished for the cinema, you know, and knowing a little bit about the history behind, obviously, Jim Morrison, I knew he wasn't quite as bad as that. He was an alcoholic and stuff, but when he wasn't drunk, he was a lovely gentleman. You know what I mean? So, but well, I think we've had this discussion, Andrew, about this, didn't we? That, but overall, I think they did a marvelous job of the whole thing, and the actors did a good job. I thought that was my take on it, and I know you felt the same way. Did you, Andrew? You felt the same way about that?
Oh, I love it. It's a masterpiece, and I watch it at least a couple of times a year. I think it's one of the great music bio movies, and I think it's going to have more effect on me when I watch it because Val Simon's passed away. You know, one of the great actors of the 80s. You know, he was in Top Gun as well, and you know, he was in that movie playing Doc Holliday. You know, an outstanding movie. That movie Heat with Robert De Niro, with one of the greatest gunfighting shooting scenes ever. You know, but we all know the research and dedication that he put into that part, into doing that part. A little bit like Timothy Simon. You know, he put dedication into it. You know, and I like that. I like hearing that. I like hearing when these guys have taken this, and girls, we got to say, and girls too, have taken it seriously. You know.
Yeah. No, for the most part, it was absolutely fine. But I thought they missed a real dramatic trick by not using what he said, you know, verbatim, kind of thing. I don't know whether they had a deal. You know, you can only have 4 F words or something, or whatever. But yeah, it did strike me that that was the dramatic bit that you to put it in would have created, you know, a much more of a dramatic thing if he says that than if he just says "play loud."
Yeah.
You know, because there's not the same venom into it, stuff like that. But no, apart from that, it was good. I enjoyed the film very much, and you know, kind of, and all those songs and stuff.
It's good that you've had a chance to sit and watch a few movies there, Simon, and you know, you got to look at the upside to being, you know, bedridden, or as you're in your case, armchair ridden, because you've been sleeping in your armchair.
That's my electric armchair of doom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
That's good. Wow, guys, we've got a show to get on with. It's 20 minutes in. We haven't even spoken about a Les Paul.
See what happens when I come back? It all goes off the rail, all crashing and burning.
Yeah, I like the fact that we decided, Brad and Simon, that we'd get together and talk about Les Paul Masters just to balance up the last couple of shows that we did, which featured, not specifically, but, you know, they were Stratocaster Masters, Simon, and, you know, we all own Stratocasters, and we said that it's you know, we have experience with it being one of the great instruments ever made. And on the other hand, Brad, you know, we've all got Les Pauls, and we understand and appreciate, you know, the differences between the guitars. And more importantly than that, once upon a time, Brad and Simon, we were listening to music. There was music that inspired us to go out and get these instruments, you know, and from my perspective, and we've done a few shows already on, you know, Jimmy Page, and we'll continue to do a lot more. But, you know, Jimmy Page was in my mind one of the giants of the Les Paul. You know, famous photos like these guys. You know, just look at that slung low, Brad and Simon. So Simon's got his Les Paul down that low.
I'm not allowed to pick it up. I'm not supposed to pick up anything heavier than a kettle right now, and it's definitely heavier than a kettle.
But
Yeah.
you know, just to kick the conversation off, guys, you know, rock and roll's an art form. It's about the music. It's about looking cool. It's about fashion, Simon. It's about words. You know, it's an art form, and you know, this guy Jimmy Page understood that very, very clearly and early, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Page, once he hopped across from the Telecaster to the Les Paul, I think that was probably a really defining moment for him in Led Zeppelin's history, because he knew at that point that was his instrument of choice, and it would become his main weapon of choice for most of the recordings. I know he dabbled with other guitars, Telecaster, Strats, Dan Electro, but for the most part, he was always driven by the Les Paul, that sound. Once he discovered that sound, and God bless Joe Walsh for introducing him to it. I know Jimmy Page had a black custom
He did,
that
didn't he,
got
for his second yeah.
that went walkabout. But for some reason, this number one guitar of his, he really discovered something quite unique about Les Pauls once he got that guitar. He knew
So
that was the
do
sound.
So did we say the Telecaster was a diversion for him away from his Black Beauties to Les Paul?
Potentially, yeah. Yeah.
Just a minute.
I think, to be honest with you, I think the Telecaster, because it was a gift from Jeff Beck. He was obviously, you know, I'll use that guitar then. And then once Joe Walsh insisted that he got that Les Paul, I think Jimmy discovered something quite magic about that guitar that he knew was going to create a particular sound that he was searching for, but that he could possibly get from a Telecaster, but found it a lot, you know, a lot easier on the Les Paul. I mean, you watch any footage of him once he's got the Les Paul in his hand, from Royal Albert Hall, Song Remains the Same, all the footage he's playing the Les Paul, it's like he's at home. It's like, you know, having and may I add, having a Les Paul hung that low is actually quite difficult
Quite
to
hard
do.
to play.
It's quite difficult to play a guitar, any guitar that's hung that low, but a Les Paul in particular. So
Crazy.
there was a comfort zone for Jimmy with that number one Les Paul of his. You know, at that point, he was given that guitar a run by Joe Walsh, and Joe Walsh insisted that he took it, and that was that. You know,
Do you think, Raj? Do you think one of the reasons? I mean, I'm like when he's in the Yardbirds, he's playing the Telecaster. He's got a rhythm guitar player, hasn't he? He's got Chris Jagger, who plays the rhythm guitar. Now, in Led Zeppelin, no rhythm guitar. I mean, there's only one guitar. Therefore, you need as much sound and as big a sound as you could possibly get. And I wonder if actually it's the difference between playing two guitarists and playing one is that you're having to fill up a lot more sound. Therefore, the Les Paul is really good for that. And we're going to talk about Paul Kossoff, in free. Well, that's again, it's same lineup as Led Zeppelin. 3 instrumentalists and a singer. And I think maybe that if you're the only guitar player, you need as much space filling as you possibly can, and therefore the Les Paul is better for that than certainly the Strat and the Telecaster.
My take on it in particular with Led Zeppelin was sonically there was a massive sound already before the guitar. Before the guitar was added, the drums were, huge. John Paul Jones's bass sound was huge. I think there was something sonically perfect with the Les Paul for Jimmy Page in the recording sense, and then obviously playing live, Simon, as you are alluding to, in a live scenario, the Les Paul with one guitar player sonically fills out a lot more sound as well. So when you're talking frequencies and recordings and even in a live scenario, there's certain pockets that a bass will fill. There's certain pockets of sound that the drums will fill.
Yeah.
And the frequency a guitar fits in is a very small frequency, really, when you talk about it, because it's a treble instrument. So you're fighting snare drum, you're fighting hi-hats, you're fighting vocals. So you find that thicker tone out of a guitar, and obviously that's what Jimmy was searching for, because even on a Telecaster he still sounded like he had a big sound, in my opinion. He still had that sound, but that was fuzz, probably a treble booster or a fuzz face or something helping that along the way. But could you imagine him playing anything off Led Zeppelin 2 without a Les Paul? I can't, personally.
No, that's true. Maybe not. I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of them theory things that you think, I can see why the Telecaster fits into a 2 guitar thing, whereas the Les Paul, if you only got one, as you say, you still got to fit in with the drums and the bass, but that kind of quite sort of trebly sound that he gets, is kind of fits in with that, with your explanation of various places in the mix, drums and the bass down here, and then the guitars in the middle and the cymbals and the vocals at the top, kind of thing. Is it fits in with that, But you say we've got 2 guitars, a harmonica player, and a singer. You've got less of a space to fill, then, haven't you?
Yeah.
Soloing.
But even then, like bigger bands, when I say bigger bands with 2 guitar players, drums, keyboards, this and that, the Les Paul does fit quite comfortably in that as well, in that scenario, Simon. But I think a lot more to do with the tone of a Les Paul, the sustain. There's something magical about a Les Paul, as we all know. And I couldn't imagine, Whole Lot of Love without a Les Paul on it. That's just like on that recording of Led Zeppelin 2. So, something about the Les Paul, Jimmy Page playing Since I've Been Loving You. He highlights what a Les Paul can do on The Song Remains the Same with backing volumes off. And then he rolls it back, rolls it forward, rolls it back. You see it in the intro. Yeah, he really does highlight what a Les Paul's capable of doing, because it starts off with a very, very trebly sound and very delicate the way he starts off. After the big, if we're talking The Song Remains the Same version, it does that big, the big intro where it kicks in. Then as he brings it all down dynamically, when Bonham brings the drum dynamics down, he's playing very dynamically and very soft, and he winds that volume up, and the difference between the neck pickup and the bridge pickup is it's like light and shade, but they're so close together as well, if that makes sense. I don't think that actually does make sense, but the neck pickup's got that depth and warmth. The bridge pickup, being the treble pickup, really does give a lot of bite. And Jimmy Page, like a lot of those guys back then, utilized the volume and tone knobs on their guitar to get sound.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He's forever doing that, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that any young player, that never mind having a pedal board, as which you could land an aircraft on.
Mm.
You learn, as you say, to control the volume, tone, and what you get out of those, and the pickups. So that's a lot of tones before you start, without getting into sort of pedal land at all. Really,
Mm.
Yeah, that's a big lesson.
And as Eric Clapton proved, on the Beano album, the Les Paul Marshall thing is pretty hard tone to beat. Let's be honest. So
it certainly is, yeah. Well, it's sort of, as we were saying earlier, as we were saying backstage, whether you include Eric, probably Eric is a Strat, is more synonymous with the Strat, but without Eric, the Les Paul, the Marshall, and the in the Beano album, you could argue no, that probably would have been, but because somebody else would have done it, but differently, that what he provided in terms of that sound and the way of doing it, that everybody else just picked up on, completely. Les Paul and a Marshall just became the thing, didn't it?
For so many of them.
100%, and there's a good. Arvin saying, the Les Paul.
Ooh.
Sorry for falling out there, guys. My internet is playing up big time. But here's another guy, Brad, that tamed the wall of Marshalls as well.
100%. 100%.
Guys, I'm going to jump out and jump back in again and just reboot my internet because it's just fucking slow here. I don't know what the issue is. I'll see you guys soon, eh?
No problem. No problem, mate. No problem. There's plenty to talk about when it comes to Les Paul. Don't worry. So obviously, Joe Kossoff, he was another one, Simon, that utilized his tone and volume controls a hell of a lot with his, with his sound, especially live. They would clean up their tone by rolling back the volume pot and then thickening it up by turning it up full again.
Yeah, but I think the other thing to say is that if you listen to them, and there's some film of them live on YouTube and stuff, that it's not very heavy.
Yeah.
It's it's the sound is driven, but it's not what I would call what we would call distorted. There's no distortion. There's drive. It gives it some grit and some push, but it's really not. It's not sort of heavy, and it's not really distorted. And I think that it's again a really important thing to note is that Kossoff, they're not playing with loads of distortion. What they're playing with is as much. I think that old adage about and certainly this is true of him, tone being in his fingers. The way he played and with his with his vibrato and his sustained heavy bends and stuff. And if you watch him, amazing player, but so much of that because the sound is pretty much Les Paul straight into a Marshall. So you've got to make the sounds out of what you can do, haven't you? Your technique and things. Whereas if you've got 17 chorus pedals and whatever else you've got, you know, I'm going to claim that maybe you need to do a little less of that, you know, because you don't need to, because you've got pedals to compensate for it.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is fine,
Simon,
you know, it's the way of the modern world, and you know, I'm doing it same as everyone else, using pedals to get a sound I want, rather than you know. So I do use my fingers and my stuff less, which is my bad. You know, but they didn't have all of that in those days.
no, 100%. And I think it sets the cat amongst the pigeons. I'm going to say it that way. When a player can just plug into an amplifier, pull up a fairly, crunchy tone, and just play and show their ability through their technique, and utilize the guitar, the tone of the guitar, the volume of the guitar. And there's a great video floating around and circulating on YouTube of Joe Bonamassa explaining how to get all these different tones and sounds out of a Les Paul just through turning volumes up and down, turning tones up and down. So and switching between the back pickup, the front pickup, and middle together. So two pickups together. And so that we were just talking, Andrew, about Paul Kossoff, and that, Simon made some very good points there about it. I won't repeat them, but the point of the matter is, it was all about, for say, Joe Kossoff, playing the hands, the ability, the sound from the guitar and the amp. There wasn't a lot really going on. There wasn't millions of pedals to help get that sound. It was all from that thicker Les Paul thing, and what a tone he had, guys.
Yeah.
What a tone. I mean, there's so many fantastic, songs of his. Everyone. I mean, I know we're going to get to a point where we talk about songs and things like that, but I don't want to give too much away. But he was one of these guys that was very vocal the way he played, and that signature sound of that Les Paul and the Marshall. But he played very soulfully, very sparse, his vibrato. A phenomenal player. I've been listening a lot to him this week, guys, in preparation for today's show. So, not that I listen to him a lot, but as you know, you go through phases where you stop listening to players for a while. But this week, in preparation for the show, Andrew, I listened to a lot of Paul. He's playing.
Yeah, I listen to him regularly, bro. I think he's just a phenomenal guitar player, and and we've ranked, Simon, haven't we, a couple of their albums on here, and I look forward for us to talk about more. But one thing, though, that convinces me more and more, guys, when I listen to Paul Kossoff and Jimmy Page in particular, is they're backed up by a tremendous bass player. The way that the bass player just continues and carries on that bass it like a separate lead instrument. It's just phenomenal, and I think it just gives them that foundation as guitar players, Simon, to lean back on and say, look, I don't need to fill every gap. I've got a bass player doing it.
Well, I think you're right. I think that the integration between the two instruments is the the bass player will play something, and then the guitar player will play something, and and they complement each other, they mesh together, or there's a call and response element to it. But that business of what are you playing, and then what am I playing, and really fitting it together, I think is, as you say, with name any of those bands, Jack Bruce, Andy Fraser, John Paul Jones, you name them, these guys are playing, and the bass player is absolutely that integration between the two instruments. I mean, you do a lot of think of All Right Now, haven't you? When it just before the solo, when he goes down, 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 boom, 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 the bass player, and that beautiful kind of integration to make one thing between two instruments playing, just doing that one after the other thing is that's, I think, peculiar of that time as well. I don't think it's quite the same thing these days. Brad, you can tell me I'm being wrong about that, but
No.
you know, I think that it's that to me that's there's a great beauty in that that meshing of those two instruments, one playing the first bit and then one plays the second bit, and then they go into the solo. Just fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's what they had to do because they didn't have 75 tracks and they didn't have 14 people in the band. It's only for two of them, and there's a lot of space to fill up and a lot of dynamics that they had to use to as we said, we talked about the guitar player turning the volumes up and down, changing the pickups, all the tones controls, all that. But then the way that the bass, when you're playing together, you get more push and more heavier, whereas if you're playing apart, you get that space. And I think one of the great things about the people talk about in the time is that space in records. You go and listen to a free record now. You go and listen to free. Yeah, there's a lot of space in those. In those records, they haven't gone mad. There's no sort of 4 guitar tracks and I'll put a 12 string on it now, and then I'll have to, have some keyboards, like free keyboards later. But there's a lot of space in those records, which makes I think for tremendous dynamics. And which you had to work at, didn't you? Andy Fraser's about 15. It's incredible.
There was something about the tonal quality that Paul Kossoff got in Free as well. Obviously, there's a similarity, guys, and I'm not going to say that every single tone is different. There's a similarity. There's a theme going on with these three players. They've got that Les Paul sort of tonality going on, but to highlight what you were saying, Simon, there was a lot of space in the music, and he's playing the vibratos that Paul Kossoff would use they were emphasizing the tone of the guitar. You could hear the timbre of the Les Paul. That's how I could hear it anyway. And when this week I was listening to a lot, and I mean, I don't know, Andrew, I don't know what your plan is to finish the show here. Are we going to mention a few songs here, there, whatever? But yeah, it's one of those things that in the particular songs for me that make them so great is the actual playing and the tone of the guitar. It makes it so great. I mean, I'm not discounting Paul Rodgers or anyone else in the band, but Paul Kossoff was a massive draw card, when it comes to Free for me.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
100%. In the live footage, Simon, and I hate to harp on about it because the three of us have spoken about this many, many times, but the live footage with the orange amp tilted down, the Isle of Wight gig, Simon, it's just phenomenal footage. And you're right, Brad and Simon, it's just 3 instruments, Simon Kirk's just got the small little drum set, and he's, it's just the lead singer's this little 5'6" nothing guy, and he's just belting.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
I think Paul Kossoff was a perfect example of someone who played. He knew when to play fewer notes and make it talk more. So that's why I say he's very vocal,
yes.
And he was one of those sort of players of that time that was very vocal in his phrasing, the way he played the Les Paul, and the tone of the Les Paul brought that out in Paul's playing. His touch, his tone, his phrasing, all of that was highlighted through because of, in my opinion, the way he connected with the Les Paul, Andrew.
Yeah. I just want to take a bit of a sideward turn here, bro, because our good friend Albert in the chat made a comment earlier saying that he wished that Jack and Bruce during their reunion concert had got together and tried playing the gear that they had when they were together in Cream. You know, the SGs, you know, the Gibson EB3 basses, and you know, and the amps. And Jack talks about it. They actually did try it. They did try and get together, but because Jack hadn't been playing an EB Brad for so long, he'd been playing his fretless Warwick basses through the Hark amps. It just didn't sound good to them, you know. And Eric hadn't played, as you know, a Stratocaster, sorry, a SG for years, you know. So it's got to sound good to them for them to be able to present it to the public, Simon. So if it was sounding like shit to them, they're not going to, you know, they're not going to take it out to market. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that was highlighted in the DVD as well, Andrew, of the reunion. They talk about that. They talk about the fact that they tried, and you know, obviously over the years have evolved and became so accustomed to a sound of what they're used to playing, and then going backwards to bring in the Marshalls and all try that stuff. It just didn't sound right to them, because it wasn't a comfortable zone for them to be playing those instruments anymore. It didn't feel comfortable. So, you know, without deviating too much, Clapton felt more comfortable in his Stratocaster, and I guess that becomes, you know, a big reason why maybe it was a successful reunion, because they were comfortable. Maybe, Andrew, I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have sounded as good if they liked it, because they weren't in that comfort zone. I understand that as a musician, because like I'll play like my amplifier and my guitar in local gigs like around Melbourne, and I play so much better than when I play through backline hired amplifiers with my guitar. It's just like you're not comfortable. You're never quite comfortable, because you're used to the tone of your gear. So I could just, you know, putting it in a bigger scale, I could just imagine, like, say, you mentioned Jack Bruce with the fretless bass. Going from a fretless bass is like a different animal to playing a bass with frets on it, and then trying to get used to that again, when you might not have done that for 20 odd years or more. You know, that's
100%.
Yeah. So I totally understand that in a sense. It would have been lovely though to see that happen. It would have been great for the fans. I'm one of them. I would have loved to have seen Clapton playing the SG and 335 and a Les Paul. Would have been beautiful. There are some wonderful YouTube clips floating around of Clapton playing a Les Paul, a Sunburst Les Paul. I think it was on the From the Cradle tour, Andrew, on that tour.
Yeah.
And he's playing like phenomenally well on it. Like he's so comfortable on it. So, yeah.
I think that also, I mean, that in terms of that reunion thing, you know, it's 40 years after the original, isn't it? You know, what you've done is you've got 40 years worth of progress as a musician, and progress in terms of gear. You know, and you go back to what you used 40 years ago, and you probably after you go, was I really doing that 40 years ago? Blimey, I've got better since then. You know, my sound has got better since then, and so you know you have to go with. I think you go, well, that's just not working for me anymore. It worked then because that's what I could get, and that's, you know, what I could, you know, what I could get from a shop. Now I've got this 40 years worth of advancement of, you know, where the sound has progressed, it's changed, it's altered. It, you know,
good point, Simon.
The gear is way better than it was, you know, or different than it was then. No more. So you think, and then you go back and go, God, was I doing this then? So I must have sounded terrible.
Yeah. No,
good
you're
point.
right. Very good point. Very good. It's all relevant what we're talking about, guys. 100%. All relevant.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Completely. I think, you know, that's what you got to remember, haven't you? That, you know, every you progress all the time, you know, and change and alter things, and then to go back. I mean, you know, it's a bit like Robert Plant going, well, you know, I don't want to go back to what I did 50 years ago. You know, to be the person who sang those lyrics and done those things doesn't really work for me anymore because I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I think after that.
And it's disappointing for fans, but it's understandable as well. You know what I mean? You're in a different point in your life. You're not quite there. But
oh, you know, from a fan's perspective, from a purist, you know, you think it would be great if they played with their original kits, the same stuff as they used when they were in Cream 40 years ago. But as I said, but that's a different viewpoint, isn't it? That's the fans' viewpoint about going to be as authentic as possible. Whereas as a musician, you said, well, I just moved past that. Now I've got what I consider to be much better sound, much more, you know, much technologically better. The kit is better, the bass is better. You know, so I'm going to use that because that's what I hear. And I don't hear it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and I'll segue to Peter Green. It's like when I saw Peter Green in Melbourne play, and he didn't touch a Gibson Les Paul the whole night, you know.
I was going to say, interesting, he was playing a Strat by then, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, like Eric, yes.
and of course I wanted to hear him play a Les Paul, but I mean that's just where he was at, and that's that. You know, it wasn't like, you know, it was like that's what he's doing. And I guess halfway through the gig, I just appreciated the fact that I was watching Peter Green rather than worry about him playing a Les Paul. But at the start, yes, I was like, damn, I wish he was playing a Les Paul. You know what I mean? I knew he didn't have Greenie at that point, but I was hoping to see him play Les Paul. But hey, I got to see Peter Green. And that was all that was important by that point. But we all know Peter Green's guitar tone, and we all know, you know, he was a big influence to so many people. And that guitar still has a legacy of its own, Andrew. You know?
Yeah, it causes division amongst some people. It causes division on our Facebook group that's associated with this channel as well, guys. You know, there was a latest Premier Guitar magazine did a article, guys, and Kurt Hammett said he was talking about his top 3 guitars, and this is a guy that's got hundreds and hundreds of guitars, Simon, and he names that 59 Les Paul as in his top 3 guitars, you know, and gives this wonderful piece about why it is, and still people get fucking upset by it. Still people want to fucking whinge and whine about it, you know. You know, gosh.
Look,
wow.
Andrew, we should know by now that there's always going to be people that like to think that their voice is valid and people want to hear or read their opinion, or, you know, everybody's got an opinion. It's like, but not everyone wants to hear it. Let's be honest. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Well, look, I know that, and so do I. So does Rock Professor, and so do you. That's why we're here. We're talking about our opinions. But, you know, saying that it should be in a museum, you know, it should be locked away, it should be, you know, in a museum somewhere. Look, yeah, I get that sentiment, but, you know, Kurt Hammett's taken it out on the road, bro. It sits next to him on business class, first class, bro. That guitar travels first class around the world, and he gives it people to play. If you want to play it, he's going to give it to you.
Let's be honest. I mean, that in itself is, you know, that's a good thing. I mean, like, it's like Joe Bonamassa with his guitars. He has a lot of them obviously locked up because he probably can't play every single guitar that he owns. It's impossible, but
100%.
he takes them out and he plays them. You know what I mean? On a tour, he'll pick the weapons of choice and he'll take them out and he'll play them. And
I think Brad, he has You know, he has museum grade stuff that is in the vault, and then he has the player grade stuff that he takes out. And that's got nothing to do with their sound. That's got to do with their overall condition.
Yeah.
You know, he takes out fantastic guitars. Those Les Pauls he takes out are brilliant guitars, but they are. And I think I put Greenie in this. You know, Greenie's had a headstock break. It's, you know, it's been played. It's battered, and you know, it's like it's is it famously somebody said to Joe one, I said, you know, every time you put a scratch in that Les Paul, you devalue it by $1,000 or whatever. And Joe Bam's sitting there going, so if I scratch it 200 times, it's not worth anything. No, it's still worth. You know, it's like complete nonsense. You know, instead of Greenie is worth what Greenie is worth because of the guitar that it is, and I think that Kirk Hammett is completely right to take it out and play it. You know, and give people a chance to see it. Maybe get a few people who are allowed to play it. You know, he gives people a chance to play it because it's not a museum grade instrument. It's not pristine.
No,
it's
had
a life. Tremendous.
It's had a tough life. It's had a headstock snap. It's had the whole work done. You know, it's a really it's a mutt of a guitar when you think about it. It's
Absolutely.
It's by no means an original condition guitar. It's nowhere near it.
No. Which means taking it out is absolutely doable. You know, because you play it. It's not going to change what it is as a guitar. You put a few more dings in it or whatever. You know, still the guitar. Whereas if you've got a museum grade, and it's like, you know, absolutely still the original color. It hasn't faded. It hasn't. You know, it's like I can understand that you might take. He gets them in the studio on a master, but he doesn't take them out. Well, that's fair enough.
Well, Mike Campbell doesn't take his 59 out on the road. You know, when he was talking about it a couple of years ago when he got it, guys, you know, and that's a pristine looking 59, you know, and he talks about that. He makes a point, you know, one of the reasons why him and his wife did buy it is because they realized it was an investment. So he's been honest talking about that, guys, you know. Of course, he's one of the greatest guitar players in the world, you know, but, you know, he said, well, I got it as an investment piece too, but, you know, he'll never take that out on the road, Simon. Never.
No, that's right. By the way, his autobiography is really good. Mike Campbell's. You haven't read it?
Brilliant.
It's you can listen to it if you've got Spotify Premium. It's you can listen to him reading it on Spotify Premium. It's worth it. Really good. Yeah. That's the things I've been doing. Listening to Mike Campbell read his autobiography and stuff. Great.
Yeah, it's one of the best because he narrates the whole thing, and you know, the attention to detail, and you would expect it to be because the guy is a guitar player, so he's going to give you all the nitty gritty, and he knows the guitars, and he knows the makes, and he knows what he was playing. He's got a bit of an idea, you know. He knows the first guitars that he picked up, so you know, fantastic.
Yeah.
But Peter Green's perspective, though, with Greenie, he was quite happy to give it away, you know. And when people were talking to him about it, there's a famous clip. I think it's a clip or an article somewhere where he turns around, Simon, and he says, he goes, I had to give it away, or I wanted to give it away because it just wasn't working for him anymore. It wasn't talking to him. I think he uses that word. It wasn't talking to me anymore.
Ah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And I can understand why he's moved on to something else. And well, you know, he did sell it to Gary Moore, so he didn't just sell it down the road, did he? He just, you know, he sold it to a fantastic musician and somebody who would really use it. So, like, you know, I think that's you know, that to me that's fine. You know, that's part of a guitar's life. You know, and if you're not selling it to a collector, you're not selling it to somebody who's not really, you know. Gary Moore took it out, used it, broke it. Then in the back, he got broken in the back of his car, didn't he? Because he had a car crash.
But it's also important to note that even Gary Moore didn't use it as his main Les Paul.
No.
It wasn't his main Les Paul. He used a was it a 59, Andrew, that he nicknamed Stripe?
Stripe.
Yeah. So
with the black bobbin pickups.
Yeah. So I mean it wasn't his main
take my
guitar.
case.
He used it a lot, and he used it a lot in that Blues for Greenie performance. But really, at the end of the day, when Peter Green played that guitar, I think that's when that tone that when I think of Greenie, I think of that tone that Peter Green got from the guitar, not Gary Moore and not Kurt Hammett, because
Yep.
that's what I'm picturing when I think of Greenie. I think of Peter Green playing that tone that he had from that particular Les Paul, and that
Yeah.
comes from the way he played, the gear he was using. I mean, you got Kurt Hammett using Greenie through quite heavily gained up amps compared to what Peter Green was using. And that guitar in itself is quite a sweet sounding Les Paul. It's not a aggressive sounding Les Paul, guys.
Yeah, you've nailed it on the head there. When I think of Greenie, I think of a couple of recordings. I think of the Boston Tea Party, which is mandatory. We haven't ranked that or spoken about that in any depth on the channel. And also Shrine, the live album that we discussed, guys, last year, and then from a studio album's perspective, then Play On, where both Danny and him are using Les Pauls, so yeah, that's the Greenie tone for me, Brad. 100%. I don't think of anything that Gary did in Thin Lizzy as the Gary tone. I mean, as the Greenie tone.
No, I mean, other than what he did with the blues stuff when he used Greenie for the more BB King sound, that out of phase thing,
which came later on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Blues for Greenie live performance and recording that. But that's the Peter Green sound with that reverb, the whole bit. It's
where he's purposely
100%.
Going out, Simon, to get that tone. He's not hiding the fact. He's not going out there saying that this is a reinvention of it. It's a determined effort to go out there and replicate that tone, and I'm glad he did that. Boy, am I glad he did that.
And by thank the Lord above he did that, because that introduced a lot of people back to Peter Green. You know what I mean? Like that reintroduced Peter Green to people who weren't familiar with him.
Go, bro. I can name 3 or 4 people straight off the top of my head that I know that dug their way back to Fleetwood Mac, early Fleetwood Mac, because of Gary Moore doing that album and DVD, bro. Yep, 100%.
Yep. Look, I was always a Peter Green fan, but after Blues for Greenie that Gary Moore did, then I really became a bigger Fleetwood Mac Peter Green fan, and that was because I was such a huge Gary Moore fan. I knew of Peter Green and I listened to early Fleetwood Mac as well, but not quite as in depth as I did after hearing Gary Moore do Blues for Greenie. Once I heard that, I was like, I've got to really investigate this stuff, because my hero, Gary Moore, is paying tribute to his hero, Peter Green.
Yep.
And I'd heard the hits of early Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green, but I'd never really investigated the sound, the albums, the whole thing. And then I got into it, and it became one of those things that whenever you felt like listening to those tones of Peter Green's hands playing that guitar, you would put on Fleetwood Mac. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm in the same camp with you, bro.
Yeah.
Same camp with you. I had the first 2 albums, listened to on and off over the 90s, Simon, and when did he do that? 2005? was it 2005 he did that Greenish tribute, and
Around
that's
there.
when
Something
that's
along
when
that,
me and at least 5 other guys, went, holy cow,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, good
Yeah.
point, bro.
mate, there was a, I mean, I was trying to keep it on theme with Peter Green because we're talking about 3 Les Paul players: Peter Green, Paul Kossoff, Jimmy Page. I was, at one point I was going to deviate with Eric Clapton, one point going to deviate Gary Moore, one point going to. So I think we've pretty much sort of had a decent discussion point about these 3 guys, but
That's the originals, isn't it?
I think what I'd like to sort of touch on before we finish up, guys, because I know, Andrew, you've got things to do on that, is maybe just if you haven't prepared for it, even just off the top of your head, if you were to, we'll go back to the start with Jimmy Page, 3 notable tracks that you can think of that are groundbreaking Les Paul tones, for Jimmy Page. I'll start with you, Andrew.
Look, I can't pick 3 tracks, bro. I just have to point to Led Zeppelin 2. Led Zeppelin 2 is a masterpiece.
Okay.
I can't. Thank you, bro. But I'm going to say Led Zeppelin 2 is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say the song remains the same video. To go and check that out, and I'm going to say also the documentary Becoming Led Zeppelin is going to put a lot of that in perspective, where he talks about deliberately trying to find that tone. So for me, this week, right now, today, those are the 3 things. If you want to go and check out why the Les Paul and Jimmy Page are so important, Led Zeppelin 2, song remains the same, video or movie Simon, and then the documentary.
Wow, you I think you probably summed up all of us. What are you, Simon? How about you? Three things.
Well, I did go the 3 songs route. I mean, I think that I'm with Andrew. A whole lot of love from Led Zeppelin 2 is, absolutely right there. My other favourite is Heartbreaker as well.
Yes.
You can hear a lot of, he exercises a lot of tone and a lot of control over on that particular. I just always loved Heartbreaker, that riff and everything is just fantastic. And I'm going to go, because it's a different tuning, going to go Kashmir. That kind of riff from Kashmir, I think is just fantastic. I think I'm just choosing the riff, to be honest, but rather than the sound of it. But I think because it's a dad tuning and it's, and it has a sound uniquely of its own, just fantastic for me. But my admiration for Jimmy Page, as we all know, knows no bounds. I think he's, for me, one of the greats, one of the fantastic guitar player, and the extraordinary way that he could play a song for 45 minutes and be constantly inventive and changing it and altering. I still find that bewildering in many ways, and I don't care if he worked sections a bit out, he's still a wizard as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, I have to agree with you 2 gentlemen, 100%. I mean, anything to do with what you guys have spoken about, I totally agree with. But I'm going to pick Since I've Been Loving You, recorded and live. Either way, just go and listen to that. That's Les Paul Heaven. I put Achilles' Last Stand. That's Les Paul Heaven. And you've got multiple tracks of Les Paul Heaven there. I feel like that's one of the, that's one of his guitar solo in that is a perfect example of Les Paul, not too overdriven, but really on that bridge pickup and going between the tones and everything like that. And I'm gonna have to go with Whole Lot of Love, because that guitar tone there, that when I think of Les Paul, I think of Whole Lot of Love. Live and recorded. But if you want, the reason I wanted a Les Paul is because of the song remains the same. I had you know, my first electric guitar I bought myself was a Japanese Fender Strat, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't get that sound out of it because I was a beginner. I had no idea, and I wanted that tone. I wanted that Les Paul tone, and I had no idea how he got that sound. And then obviously through, as we did back in that day without the internet, buying guitar magazines, reading this and that, you started to work out, well, hang on, not all electric guitars sound the same. Hang on, a Les Paul made by Gibson sounds like that. A Fender Strat sounds like that. Oh, and then it started to make sense. So, yeah.
Your first mistake, Brad, was not looking at the headstock of Jimmy Page and it says Les Paul, and then buying the same one as that. That's your elemental mistake.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to jump to the next guitarist we were talking about, which is Kossoff.
Yep.
So,
well, that's easy. That's easy for me, bro. So again, these are the two songs specifically. Woman off the album Free, which came out in '69. Go and check out the intro. It's definitely a deep cut. Woman off the first album. Simon, you already mentioned it. You gave us an interpretation of it. All Right Now is just a masterpiece. It gets played on classic radio. I never get sick of it. It's just a remarkable song, and often we talk about this, don't we, about yes, we can hear songs, but when you listen to that song in your headphones and appreciate that space that you were talking about before, Simon, when with the bass playing off the lead and how Kossoff leaves the space for the bass player to come through. It's just phenomenal. And my third one, Brad, because I love film, is the Isle at White gig, 35 minutes. It's all over YouTube. It's a free concert for you to go and watch. It's a masterpiece of, again, one of the points that we love talking about, simplicity, just a band playing together, tight.
Yeah.
No effects, Simon, you know. Just volume, Brad.
Yeah.
The only thing Paul is working with is volume, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, volume and tone, pickups. Yeah.
It's all
Simon.
volume.
So I've chosen three songs. So clearly,
Easy,
All Right
Simon.
Now is right up. You know, if you want to know one song that Paul Kossoff, you know, what he sounds like, All Right Now is the one. You know, the space, the gap, that, you know, it's just perfect. Fire and Water as well, which I think is a fantastic. I really like that as a track. It's got that kind of, again, that kind of dynamic control that he has, and kind of, you know, and purely because it's much more personal to me, is Wishing Well by Free. Wishing Well.
Yeah.
Well, you see, whenever I hear Wishing, I've said this on here, but I'll say it again. Whenever I hear Wishing Well, it takes back to when I was 14 or 15, first going into the pub, the Royal Oak in Clifton, Bristol. I don't think it no longer exists. But and every time Wishing Well was on the jukebox, and we used to play it there, and so it takes me back to my teenage years of having a beer, isn't it? So I'm going for that on a personal level because it has such a strong connection, you know, a memory for me. Definitely Wishing Well is my third one.
No,
Where are you going, Brad? What are you going?
One of my, you know, all-time favorite songs of Free is "Be My Friend," so that would have to be on there. I mean, that's a wonderful track. Yeah. All Right Now, I mean, that it's a modern. Well, it's on the radio every day, and I'm the same as you, Andrew. I fist pump the air when that comes on. Can't help it. It's one of those songs. I would say Wishing Well as well, Andrew. I got to say that one, because I used to play that in a cover band, and I used to get a little bit more than excited playing that song. Let's just put it that way. I had a hell of a time playing that song. I used to probably overplay on it the whole bit, but I loved it. It's one of those tracks that you know, resonates a lot. But there's other ones for Paul as well that I think, you know, Be My Friend is one of those tracks that gives me goosebumps. I like that one. So
Yeah, good call.
yeah, and I guess we come to the last, Les Paul great that we'll talk about, Mr. Green, Peter Green. Andrew, what's 3 things that you think are mandatory for Peter Green
Easy.
listeners?
Easy, bro. Easy, bro. Jumping at Shadows live on the Boston Tea Party. I'll never forget the first time I heard it. Drenched in reverb. You can hear Peter playing the volume. He's just riding the volume between, the solos, and then when he's singing, and then, it's just, I wish there was footage of that. It just blows my mind. Rolling Man off the Shrine DVD that we spoke about, guys, CD album that we spoke about. And the reason why I've picked that is because that's Peter's interpretation of the woman tone, which you don't associate Peter Green a lot playing. Normally he's quite trebly and plays with a lot of reverb. But again, when I first heard that, I thought, holy cow, this is just phenomenal. And look, one of the greatest pieces of music I ever heard in my life before I knew Fleetwood Mac was Albatross as an instrumental. I have to pick that, Simon and Brad, just as a representation. I don't know what he's playing on that. There's a Strat there, for sure, but just as representation of what that piece is. And again, how people didn't realize, that this band was responsible for that piece. Phenomenal. I did nearly the impossible, Brad. You've managed to nail me down to 3 Peter Green things. Well done, bro.
Not 3 albums either.
I know it's going to change, Andrew, by tomorrow. I know. Simon, how about you?
So I've got a bit more classic that. But Oh Well, I've gone again a personal favourite of mine. I love Oh Well. But it's a fantastic riff, kind of lots of intense kind of singing, but that tone, definitely Peter Green for me. Classically, Black Magic Woman, fantastic for me. Again, these are personal things. I remember this from my teenage years. Fleetwood Mac's a fantastic track. We used to play it in the disco. We used to go every week. They used to play the Fleetwood Mac version, not the Santana version. So that's good. And I also went with the Supernatural from John Mayall's Bluesbreakers.
That intro note.
Yeah. That kind of atmospheric reverb. You talked about reverb, Dredge, slow bit. Again, if you want to know what Peter Green, that for me, it's fantastic. I thought, when we did it recently, that album is like stuck out for me. So that's my third song. I picked the Supernatural.
Well done, Brad.
Well, for me, I've always loved "Need Your Love So Bad." There's something about that.
Of course, yes.
Well done.
So bad. I found it very hard to narrow down 3 for Peter Green, but I'm going to do my best. I put "Oh Well" because there's just something about that track that gets my blood pumping. I just love the energy of that song, and I don't know. I love just the feel of it, the tone. I love the lyrics too. I mean, it's just one of those classic blues tracks that I think every blues band should play. I was really glad to hear Slash do a version of that on his album as well, his blues album. And I found it very hard to pick a third one. I picked there's 2 tracks that I'm going to just flick a coin. Green Manalishi.
Yeah.
But those 3 were what resonated with me this week. And again, that's probably going to change.
That they made are just phenomenal, aren't they? That,
Yeah.
you know, oh
I'll
well,
probably-
Green Man League, Man of the
it'll-
World,
it-
Albatross. That's a brilliant run of singles, isn't it? It just is.
Yeah. It'll
Yeah.
change tomorrow, but that's it for me today. Yeah.
We're not doing this again next week. Somebody else next week.
No. But you know what? The wonderful thing is, if we decide to do this again next year with these three players, it'll
Yeah.
be all different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, 100%, bro. Look, it's been incredible hanging out with you guys and with the Rock Professor joining us here, and lots
Yeah,
of people
thanks.
in the chat. Helene's right, quite a few people in the chat today.
Yeah.
Well done. It's always cool to
Me
have a bit of
too.
a party
Thank you very
going
much.
on here.
Yeah.
Next week we're going to follow the same theme that we did with the Stratocasters, because we spoke about classic Les Paul Masters. This week we're going to be talking about 3 Les Paul Masters, and number 1 on that list is going to be obviously Slash. We're going to include Slash. I'm going to invite Simon and Brad to suggest here live now the other 2 spots of Les Paul, what we would call modern Les Paul players to
I'll
fill
tell you.
the
Oh, blimey.
Joe Bonamassa.
Joe Bo.
Bonamassa.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joe Bo. Cool.
Definitely
Yep.
got him active. Absolutely for sure. Oh, who else? See, it gets difficult.
Is there,
There's so
is
many,
there-
aren't there?
is there a possibility that we can mention one that's not quite so modern in the sense of right now, but in my opinion, still a modern blues classic? Gary Moore, maybe.
Have to be. Let's get.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah,
for me,
yeah,
when I think of Les
Yeah.
Paul, I think of Gary Moore, who's right up there for me as being one of my favorite players of all time. So
Job done. Gary Moore, Slash, and Joe Bo. Job
what a
done.
show.
Yes.
Yes.
So usual theme, guys. We're going to get together. We'll spend an hour and a half talking. We'll have some picks, and we'll just
Yeah.
have a general conversation and talk about what motivated us, and also we'll pick 3 numbers. Oh, that's going to be hard with Joe
Well,
Bond.
this
Oh
is-
my
wait a
lord!
minute, so next week is modern Les Paul players.
Yes.
Okay, fine, good. That's right. We're not doing strats yet.
Well,
No.
we'll do vintage
Like
strat
the classic
players
and modern.
the following week. We'll
Yeah.
bookend it. We started it with strats, 2 Les Pauls, and then we
Yeah.
bookended
We'll
with another strat episode.
John ZD says Slash, Bonamassa, and Brad Cook. We'll be discussing
Hey.
you next week on the show, Brad.
Well, maybe John, if you want to discuss that, then maybe I should sit out, and because I can't talk about myself. That's a bit weird.
You've got to talk about yourself in the third person.
I can't really do that. Hey, I can do that when I release new music, or if we talk about anything to do with what I'm doing. But yeah, I can't talk
Thanks,
about.
Gretch.
No, that's a bit weird.
Rich likes these chats too. So, yeah, we'll continue doing these chit chats until the Rock Professor's back on board. And the good thing with these kind of chats is that there's no pressure, for the
Bit of
Rock
fun.
Professor. And you know what? I'm just going to throw because I can. Not often do I wave the finger here. But the week after that, we're going to talk about Telecaster dudes. We're going to talk about
yeah.
3 Telecaster. All right.
Oh yeah. But don't forget,
That's quite a lot.
Andrew, we have to do classic strat players. So I'm going to suggest.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest you have to do one with. You have to talk about Stevie Ray.
Yes.
Okay, in that one.
I mean,
You guys
is he classic or is he modern?
He's classic.
classic, modern, whatever you want to call it. But I think
He
Stevie Ray's
straddles
classic.
both.
Yeah. Anyway, we're getting this blurred line between classic and modern, aren't we?
It's just, hey, like anything, bro, it's open to interpretation. It's what we say it is.
Yeah. Hey, It's our
Oh, so
channel.
we're doing-
We can
so
talk
we're
about
doing
what we like.
Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Hendrix as our classic ones, are we?
Hey, it's our channel. We can do what we like.
Um,
Look at
And
that, get all
Clapton-
uppity.
and Clapton can be both classic and modern too. Jeepers.
There you
Oh,
go. Yeah,
Jeez, yeah.
playing the Albert Hall even as we speak. There we are.
Hey, you know what? I got a little reminder that 12 months ago, 2 days ago, whatever, I was at Royal Albert Hall watching Clapton, and it made
Yeah.
me nearly
Yes.
cry.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Ah,
Yes.
Oh well. I one day I'll be back there.
yeah.
All right, boys. We're gonna wind up. Been great hanging out with you guys. We'll catch you next week, and thank you for
Yep.
supporting the channel. If you've watching on replay, a lot of you do, so it's good. 19 people watching, guys. So
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for watching.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
because we've got the popular member of the crew back, Andrew, which is the Rock Professor. So as soon as he comes back, all the ladies come back in and watch, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
w-
I wish. Yes.
While he's there, we'll get the Ruck Professor to do a shout out, and we'll see you next week while we're talking about some modern Les Paul players. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I will. Before I do that, shameless plug. Chris Buck, Cardinal Back's new album, Midnight of the Legends, fantastic record. Really nice, beautiful record.
Hold it up again, Simon. Hold it up.
No, I've got the signed copy, you'll notice, but yeah, check it out. It's really good.
Have to do that. We'll do.
Modern double blues record. If you're into that sort of thing, really nice. I've been enjoying it the last couple
Definitely
of
check
days.
it out.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we've got John ZD 351. Great to be back, John. Ellen as well. Gretch, Helena Hara, Jonas Halberg, Albert Arthur Pastips. Great to see you, Arthur. Fantastic. Gretch, Arvin, of course, Arvin. We'll continue our English place names nonsense. Offline, which is such fun. Carl as well. Thank you, Carl, for dropping by. Good to see you, man. What's a nice
Cheers, Carl.
Yeah. Arvin, Helene. Quentin, Guitar Talk Universe. Quentin, thanks for dropping by, man. I hope you're all right. It's tough times for us old people in the hospitals. Elaine, Arvin, Jonas. I think that's everyone who made a comment. I hope it is. So thanks very much, everyone who made a comment, and those who didn't, who just watched. That's absolutely fine. It's fantastic to see everyone, and thank you for all your messages over the weeks, guys. It's been fantastically supportive and uplifting to have all of that from everyone. So thank you very much, and we'll be back next week for more of this nonsense. Take care. Have a great week, guys. Everyone.